All right. I did talk about this in a short video recently, but I think the topic warrants maybe a little bit of discussion because it feeds a lot into what we do with habitual growth and building that development and growth over the long term. And I was listening. It came from a podcast with Alex Hormozi, which I really enjoy listening to him. And it was he was speaking to a group of people at a conference about sales, but it was really applicable to what you and I firmly believe in and how we try to encourage people to live with intent. And he was talking about the fact that, a lot of people say knowledge is power. And what they hear a lot of times when you say that is knowledge will bring tangible things to me. So if I have more power, I get more money because there is some sort of concrete resource that comes by way of that knowledge. And he had a great shift on that perspective, which is, yes, knowledge is power, but it's powerful because it actually allows you to be more resourceful in that when you invest in yourself and you build out your development and growth journey, you build skills and gain experiences that no one can take away from you. So the knowledge is power component is less about the tangible things that you get from learning and developing and building your skills, and more in terms of what you as a person have now been exposed to and are becoming great at over this journey. And that's really where you become unstoppable, because it doesn't matter what external circumstances happen to you. If you lose your job, your company folds, you get divorced and you lose, your life savings, whatever it is, you've built skills that you could replicate in different scenarios versus I've amassed a pile of wealth that might not be there because of something outside of your control. So just curious, I don't know how that resonates with you or if you think completely differently, but I loved it.
Well, give me an example of how that worked for you.
Well, I've been on both ends. So I think probably the biggest learning that I can directly apply is I put all of my eggs in one basket when I went to pharmacy school, went out, was in that profession, and then wanted to make a move, was able to find a job in a different industry, and then was laid off. And it was a stark realization when I went, okay, well, I've been a year in this job, so technically I haven't really built any substantial new skills. I've been exposed to different things, but nothing that I would consider something I could directly map into some, a career path that I really wanted to do and was interested in. And that for me was the turning point. Was I will actively seek and become a lifelong learner of different things that I feel like I can put in my tool belt, because to be in the position where I felt like I had no options because I hadn't built the skills was an awful feeling. I don't know. Have you had a similar situation?
I have, yeah. I've got a lot to say on this topic. I think what Alex shares is really interesting. He's got a very fast story. He's still a very young man. He's younger than I am. I don't want to say he's like 35, 37, something like that. But, he got successful very fast because I think he figured out a key to selling. And one of the things that always resonates with me and what Alex does, and actually I think the most important piece probably in what you're sharing, but what resonated with you is just the reps. There is this level of acceptance that people have to cross to understand what they are capable of, or what you just said there right at the end, which is like, what do I look for? Like, I realized like I got into this scenario and I hadn't really learned anything new because I wasn't seeking it out. I've bounced in between entrepreneurship and corporate life my entire career. I started off in entrepreneurship. I've, launched and run several companies. I've worked for Fortune 12 companies, running $500 million synergy projects and things like that. And it wasn't really until I actually started to seek out certain things and look for opportunities that it really clicked with me. And the biggest thing that I actually learned, and what was really funny to me about your Alex analogy, or at least story, is something that he said in a different video clip that has always stuck with me, which is like he talks about like building a specific body part in the gym. I think it was his triceps or something. And he was like, it's all about reps. And a guy who's going in there and he's doing 3 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 15, and I'm going in there and I'm just doing, however many sets until I get to 100, right? He's like, now I've basically like 10x whatever this guy is doing, and that forces my muscles to grow. And it might be a silly example, but it applies to every aspect in your life, right? You're afraid to have a difficult conversation. Go have a difficult conversation, right? Go, you don't know how to start a business. Well, you better watch every movie or every video that you can find and learn from somebody who's doing it, and then just dive in and do it. Like there's no way around the experience. And so the reps, in my opinion, leads to the resourcefulness of who you are and what you're capable of doing and how you handle situations. And I think people always try to really skip that first step. I know what I need to do, but I just don't. I just don't do it, or I'm not willing to do it, right? And it's funny because I had this conversation with one of our partners at Maison Bloom, and she was telling me about how, she's got to situate what she charges, her fees, like how she works with businesses. And I told her, I said, listen, like you've told me this story now for like 6 months, and I am an advocate for you, and I'm the one paying for you. So I want your services. You do a good job. You are obviously like thinking about this continuously, but you keep avoiding the topic. You need to just go have the conversations. And I said, I said to her, because Andy talks about this when he talks about his bitch voice, right? It's like, there's a couple of podcasts that he'll say this. He'll be like, I don't want to do something, and as soon as my brain tells me that's when I go do it. And I've like adapted that philosophy as well. So I told this person, I said, the second your brain tells you, oh, I'll just push that off to next week, go do it now, because that means you're in that moment where you're thinking about it. You're going to have more confidence in yourself because you're delivering it, and that in turn leads to your resourcefulness. But resourcefulness sometimes really boils down to your internal confidence, of course, but a situational awareness, right? We all get stuck in these situations where it's just us and we are faced with a problem. And it's like, we have such tunnel vision. This is the only way to solve the problem. And in my experience, one of the biggest things I've learned in everything that I've done is just how there is infinite number of ways usually to get to a solution. It may not be the best choice, it may not be the optimal choice, but there's still a choice, right? And so if you believe in something strong enough, the David Goggins adage, like burn the boats, right? There's no turning back. You said this, like I put all my eggs in this basket. All right, well, you got to figure out how to get it done, right? You're either going to run into a wall where there's nothing else, or you're going to say, this is so important enough to me that I'm going to find a way through this scenario. And almost every single time, as of late, my resourcefulness of what I've learned in this journey has allowed me to say, okay, I've got tunnel vision. I get really upset. Damn, this one thing is not going to work. And I have to step back and I have to give myself a little bit of time. And usually within 24 hours, I'm like, here's 3 or 4 other avenues that I can take to get around this problem.
Yeah. And I think you brought up some great points, and especially talking about, how we hesitate so much to do something. And actually it's not the to do that ultimately is the skill that we're building. Yes, we may master that skill in some way, but what you're really doing is building that mental resilience characteristic and discipline. And that's, I think, a part of what Alex is talking about. It's all the intangible things that become part of who you are that no one can take away from you. So to your point, hey, when you hit a wall, you feel like there's a dead end, you take a minute and you go, okay, let me think about all the other possibilities. Whereas if you hadn't done those reps and you hadn't pushed through, seemingly hard times, which when you look back are just small, measures of self-discipline, then you miss that point where you've built that skill. And that is actually the most valuable, because then you can be plopped into different and harder things in the future. And, and he was talking about too, I don't remember if it was like high power sales or like high stress sales or something in it. And it was so true. It's like, if you can get experience here and build your personality characteristics and skill set of discipline at this level, when something harder comes along, you pull from that and you do that at that level a little bit longer. Okay, that then becomes easy, and then you seek harder, and people miss that growth because
Mm.
they're so focused on what is hard in the moment
Yeah.
that they don't realize that if you keep going and you push and you look for other avenues and other ways to solve problems, build resilience, build consistency, that what you're feeling right now is hard actually becomes easy through enough repetition and enough exposures to that experience.
What I think too, it's what's hard and what's really focused on is the end goal, right? I got to close
Yeah.
a sale. If you're focused on, I've got to close this sale, I need this money, and that doesn't happen, you're absolutely crushed. But if you're like, hey, I'm going to try out some new things, or I need to be really aware of like how I'm articulating this. So if this doesn't go the way that I want it, I can do it a different way for a different client, and you can test things out. So you're testing the process, you're being present in the moment, you're focused really on what you're doing, not necessarily the end goal. And I think too many times, at least from my experience, I was always like, I have to have this thing. It's got to be this. It's got to be this. It's got to be this. And at the end of the day, a lot of times we all know the big names that are out there that we reference quite frequently, but like, Elon Musk, one of the most famous things he's known for is the first principles thinking. And if you just take it back, like honestly, it sounds so simple, but if you just take back the basics of like asking why for every scenario, like I'm making this product and I've got to sell it. Okay, well, the customer's not buying it. Well, why aren't they buying it? Or why do I need them to buy it? Is there a different avenue that I can get to them to buy it? Are there other customers that are like them? Have I, gone through my Rolodex? Have I, like there's just so many questions we can ask instead of focusing on that end goal, that one thing. Again, looking at multiple options, but being aware that you're doing it in the moment. And that resourcefulness oftentimes will come from the reps of analyzing a situation, right? Going back to
Yeah.
what we always talk about, just intentionality, right? Well, what is your intention going into it? Yes, you want to sell, but are you trying to craft a better pitch? Are you trying to get a better response from the customer? Are you trying to get them to have a strong LTV? Are you trying to get to know them? What is your intention in the conversation? Because all of those things more than likely will have a different outcome, and that outcome will craft and direct you into your future conversations based off that single experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that habitual growth does really well is, obviously people set goals. We're intentional with the actions that you need to take to achieve those goals. And sometimes people feel like the actions aren't making progress. And yes, you need to do them long enough. And there's a byproduct of intentional action towards a certain goal that isn't or may not be solely related to that goal,
Mhm.
because there are things that you might be doing that you feel like are moving you closer to that, and they might be, and there could be something in the future that you're actually called upon to use those skills or that characteristic that you've built in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's been true for me, where I've had to learn or do or try things because I'm focused on this one goal. I'm intentional about what I'm doing, and all these actions line up. And then 6 months, a year later, I've got a different project or initiative that I'm working on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. I know about this because I
Mhm.
already had to do it. And so it's almost this ripple effect when you use such intention in your day-to-day life, because you build things that maybe you don't realize how important they are until months or years down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Then two things come to mind. One, I, as I've gone down this path several times now and have put in, enough reps for me, not enough, but like many more reps than I historically ever would have. Two things really come to
Yeah.
mind. One, it is the resourcefulness, but it's also realizing like a lot of times people just move, and it's not that they don't think about where they're going. When you're moving, you also learn, am I going in the right direction? Am I actually like through this trial and error, through getting punched in the face multiple times? Do I really have the dedication to the thing that I want to get? Am I going to find a way around it? Or is it just a completely wrong direction? And I realize as I'm getting this thing or pursuing this path, it's not really what I wanted, right? And that's where building your skill sets becomes really important, because you're taking away that resourcefulness from the situation of trial and error and either getting the outcome you wanted or not. And sometimes you'll just find like, hey, I just been walking down a bad path. Like I shouldn't have been this way. I need to pivot. And you got there faster. And that's the second thing.
Yep.
I find myself doing this and just moving a lot faster. When you say, hey, I know I'm just putting in the reps. I don't want to do this thing, but I got to get through it. I am going to be resourceful. I'm going to think about this in a different way. Now it's, historically, I would have said, hey, I'm gonna, call this person tomorrow, or I'm gonna call that person next week. I'm gonna schedule it out. I'm gonna put 30 minutes on it. And we blow up the amount of time and effort that it actually takes us to put into certain things, when in reality, a phone call could have been 5 minutes, right? An email takes you 3 minutes to craft instead of the 30 minutes that you blocked out that time for. And you start to naturally move faster and faster and faster. And that, going back to one of the points you said, opens your eyes to like, hey, I can now start to move all of these various pieces around. I can send emails in this time. I can move this meeting up. And that's usually money saved, resources, earned, things like that, which then compound all of those additional impacts that you're trying to make for your personal growth.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it probably, to bring it back to close, I would encourage people, obviously people need to apply what they hear, based on their own experience and the journey that they want to take. But I think weaving into part of your intention is, what knowledge can I gain in the forms of skills, mental discipline, resilience, through these intentional actions that I can start to apply today. So what can I build into my essential actions list that moves me forward towards my goals, but also helps me build skills and characteristics that make me more resourceful in the long run. And that can just be, putting one thing on your essential actions list and committing to it for the next month or 2 months, as you work to build it. And then over time, you'll start to figure out, okay, that worked really well, or I think I need to lean in here a little bit more. But start today, start incorporating that mindset into your daily lists, and start building that. It will make you ultimately unstoppable and help you achieve higher levels of success, because you become a greater resource for the problems that are out there in the world.
Yeah. And, a lot of life is solving your own problems, right? We all have this grandiose idea of ourselves of, we're going to save the world. We're going to, what's the famous Miss Universe line? Like, I'm gonna, it's something about world hunger. I'm gonna stop world hunger, right? And in reality,
Yeah.
there's so many things in our own personal lives that we oftentimes don't even think about. We don't even know how to solve, and so we just throw them to the side, when in reality, to your point, think about how to implement this now. It has never been easier to find information, ever. And it's only getting easier through ChatGPT, through YouTube videos, through Google, whatever it is. There is an answer for everything out there. Like, even if you are a person sitting at home and you just don't know how to do something, you can go find that answer. And just ask the question. Just be aware. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Why is it important? What are you learning out of it? And if you step back before you start anything and you just focus on the here and now, I'm going to enter into this because of X, Y, and Z, not necessarily focusing on that end goal right away, you will build up that resourcefulness. You will build up that resilience. You will build up that internal confidence that allows you to get to the next phase. And to your earlier point, take on bigger and bigger and bigger things over time. And all of a sudden, you're going to look back 3 months down the line and you're like, holy cow, I have grown so much. I know so much more. I have a tremendous skill set. And then you'll hit the point where you're like, wow, the more I know, the less I know. And then the game becomes really fun.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate your time this week. Have a great vacation, and I look forward to our conversation next week.
Sounds great. Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right.